Welcome, everybody, and welcome back to the Dudes Watch a Movie podcast. I am the notorious GING, and with me, as always, is...
Dead Sprocket.
And this week, we decided to watch the 1982 classic, The Thing, directed by John Carpenter and written by Bill Lancaster, who only wrote one other movie that I've ever heard of, and that was Bad News Bears. Right?
How do you go from that to
some somewhat slapstick childish comedy, although the 70s version is way more rude and crude than I thought it would be. But still, kind of a weird leap from that to The Thing.
It sounds just like a completely change of artistic process, I guess.
I don't know.
It is what it is.
And then, of course, John Carpenter, famous for the original Halloween movie, as well as other projects, but that and The Thing, I think, would probably be the two he's most well known for. At least the two that jumped to my mind. The other, or I guess I shouldn't say the other, but the thing that initially grabbed me during the opening was the score. Had a very, dark 80s...
Very ominous kind of drone.
Yes. And to me, I thought it was a score by John Carpenter. He's fairly famous for doing his own scores and the music to his movies. Turns out not done by him. It was done by somebody else, whose name I have forgotten. I don't believe I wrote down.
Is he like a jack of all trades? This Mr. Carpenter?
Normally, and I mean, he even makes music now still. And Carpenter Brute, I believe, is even, they took their name after John Carpenter.
I like them, and I didn't even know that.
Yeah, it's a lot of his 80s styles are that kind of drony, synthy, dark,
that
dark sound.
It. Carpenter Brute is a little bit more on the horror side.
Yep. The other big thing that jumped out to me initially was fuck those people shooting at that dog.
Right.
It pissed me off so bad.
I'm okay with that.
I'm not even the biggest dog person, but I was like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? Anyways, we will come back to that. As always, I guess we should start with the cast. What were your thoughts overall as to how you felt about that cast? Did you like them? Did you not like them? Anything stand out to you?
I didn't mind the cast overall. It just seemed like your regular group of guys for some odd reason. Maybe it's the fact that they're on a base out in the middle of nowhere. I got a MASH feeling. It's a group of yahoos.
It was the crossdresser, right? Brought her all back.
All back. I don't know. I like it. It was a good wide range of different people. Each you've got the loopy crazy guy, and then your typical I wouldn't say skater guy, but just the really off who doesn't feel like he belongs, and then you've got your lead, Mr. Kurt Russell McCready, who...
Sorry. Kurt fucking Russell. Thank you very much. As I have in my notes here.
Anytime I see him, because the first time I ever saw him, all I can think of is Escape from LA or Escape from New York.
Snake.
Yep, Snake Plissken.
Speaking of the rollerblading character, or I guess not even rollerblading, he's roller skating.
True.
His name is Knowles, and I found him super irritating. My only assumption is that at the time, roller skating was, I assume, a cooler thing to do. So he was supposed to be that hip kind of character, but it's one of the few things in this movie that really dates it and gives it a real 80s vibe, early 80s. Another one, I don't know if you noticed, but Keith David is in this movie, and he played Childs.
Oh, yep.
From Saints Row.
I recognize the voice for sure.
He's also the Arbiter in the Halo series.
Really? That explains it.
And he was also
made that connection.
He's also in Platoon. He does a lot of voice work. The other member of the cast that I'm curious to see if you recognize or if you even know who it is, Dr. Blair, the one that got locked in the shed, didn't lock himself in the shed. Do you have any idea who that was?
He looks familiar, but no.
Do you think he maybe had a blood sugar issue?
Is that the diabetes man?
That's the diabetes man.
Diabetes.
That's Wilford Brimley. Diabetes.
Beatus.
Like halfway through the movie, it clicked with me, and I had to immediately IMDb it to find out if I was right about that or not, because it was driving me crazy, and I wanted to tell you so bad when we were watching that.
That would have changed it for me completely.
But I thought as a whole, the rest of the cast, they seemed very, very real. It didn't seem like a bunch of actors out there. It did seem like a real life unit of people that would have been there, minus the ones that I was recognizing, like Kurt Russell and Keith David. But even those two were, with the beard and everything, especially on Kurt Russell, didn't stand out to be not him. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess now when I think about it, the one thing that stands out to me is they didn't seem like a bunch of scientific people. Like, it's supposed to be a scientific expedition. If I recall, they just kind of didn't seem to fit that.
Well, they had the doctor there, and then they had the comms guy who also was irritating to me, with the glasses, and he was always freaking out. Yeah,
Windows.
Yeah, I can't even remember what his name was. But it would make sense to me that they would have kind of different expertise from different fields. So they had the doctor, they had the scientist, they had, I assume Kurt Russell was their like survival expert or something like that. So one of them was probably a cook.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. It didn't feel like a scientific team. To me, it felt like just a bunch of guys who work for this company and are just there because they have to be. Not that they're, I don't know, not that it's a scientific endeavor or something, but...
And I'm not fully sure that we ever figured out why it was that they were there.
Yeah, they just knew that they were stranded. There was no explanation as to what their
They were just
mission
stationed out on Antarctica for some reason. Which, I mean, it works for me. Especially in horror movies, I don't need you to explain.
True. Unless it was an expedition team, then I guess that's a generalizing term for stuff.
Yep. But it made sense to me, though, that... I don't know if you ever watched the show The Colony, but it's if you're in a survival situation, which even if you're purposely going to Antarctica, I believe at some point it becomes a survival mission because there's not a lot to do down there other than try and survive.
Yep.
You would want people from different fields of study and people with different skills to help everything run smoothly.
That makes sense.
And speaking of not really knowing why they were there, that was one thing with the plot that I think actually ended up working in its favor to a degree, is that they didn't really explain too much of what was going on. They kind of just let it play out. They didn't try and put it into a backstory of what the deal with the thing was, or why they were there, or what happened with the other squad, which they did kind of decipher eventually.
The Norwegians, yeah. I think that kind of helped to expand upon what they were doing, but it was still kind of vague because it would appear that the Norwegians were trying to excavate for something, I guess, and then so maybe there was just a joint task force. But
there were some plot points too that I thought were really well done. Going back to the dog, it was a good 2 minutes of me just being mad at these people trying to snipe it from the helicopter, because to me it seemed like it was just, I thought it was weird that there first of all would be a husky just running around in Antarctica, and then I was thinking that people in the helicopter were just assholes who were bored, so they were going to go try and hunt the dog from the helicopter. But after about 2 minutes of watching it run, it hit me. I was like, oh, fuck me, that's the thing.
Bing!
That's what's going
That's
on.
the carrier, yep.
I kind of wish I hadn't known what happened in this movie.
Yeah.
Because that would have been a huge twist. But they let that movie drag out for a decent amount of time before any hint of anything weird happening. They did kind of have some weird holes on the dog to make you think something was important about it. But up until the point where it switches over and starts doing its thing, right. They didn't play it up as anything strange, which I thought worked really well for it.
I mean, they made it a bit ominous with its lonely shots. In that one particular where it's the shadow of the guy in his room and the dog goes in there, it's just kind of a little what's going on. But yeah, I could totally see that from a standpoint of never having seen the movie or hearing about it at that time when it came out. That probably would help to amplify the surprise, I guess, of it.
Which it would have been a huge surprise if we'd had no idea, because that's some fucked up.
That was very, very... That movie just kind of shoved you into it, and then really kind of, I don't want to say climaxed at that point, but that's when the meter of shit got real, kind of spikes.
It immediately, the paranoia sets in, which I thought was really well done. Just them not knowing who they can trust, constantly like fighting with each other, thinking
Absolutely.
the other one is infected and this one isn't, which I thought they handled in some kind of neat ways. Like first they were just like, let's quarantine, let's get him, he's lost his mind, let's put him out in the shed, and eventually they realized it's not going to work out that way. So we're gonna go ahead and tie everyone down and do that blood test, which was really cool.
I did write that down. It was a kind of an interesting concept that just how someone who's supposed to be a survivalist figures that out. Whatever. I will say the one thing that kind of let me down with the movie is, I don't know, when they first discover what was going on, that dog handler guy, I don't want to say he didn't seem too freaked out, but like, I probably would have been a little bit more, I don't know, expressive that I'm fucking terrified of what's going on,
Yeah.
but he seemed a little chill about it. I kind of felt that was throughout the film, I won't say anticlimactic, but I feel like maybe it's just because of a movie of its time, it didn't feel as if it was that big of an issue. I mean, obviously, the doubts and the people questioning each other was a good premise on there, but I don't know, part of me felt like it was just kind of, kind of toned it down.
And I think, and I don't know if you're specifically meant like talking about the very end of the movie as a
Part
bit
of it,
anticlimactic too.
Did put that in there, yeah.
I think that's just the way, and I don't know, I guess not so much now with horror movies, they always like to have their neat little wrap-ups, but I did like that it's still a little open to interpretation. You don't ever see the actual thing itself dead at any point. They don't show the hero standing over the burning body or anything weird. It
has a typical horror movie where it could go on.
Yes, exactly. And I think in terms of the thing, that works out really well for it. It's a very uneasy ending. The thing that I liked about the thing, which I wish had a different name, and we should have looked to see if it does. I bet it probably doesn't. I think it rivals the Xenomorph in terms of just pure terrifying factor. Of if that were a real life thing you could encounter, how much I would not want to see that.
Yeah, the ability to mimic something really puts you on edge, because then you're turning yourself on yourself in a way. Like, not only were they turning on each other, but they were starting to question themselves in the very beginning, unless of course they were already changed. Then
And it's the idea also that not only can it perfectly blend in, but once it gets caught, it just looks terrifying. The weird formations that it never fully finished, and the weird tendrils shooting out of it and everything like that.
I wrote in here, to me, for the first time, looked like licorice.
That might have just been you.
The part that really got me was when the head came off the guy, and then just a little piece comes out, wraps around, and starts dragging, and all I could think of was like strawberry rope or whatever it's called.
Some red vines.
Yeah, red vines.
There, and you did mention some of the effects on it. I think for the most part, especially for being from the 80s, they hold up crazy well.
Yeah, practical was great.
It's fantastic. You can obviously tell it's not skin. That'd be one thing that they would do better now, is get it more skin-like. You can tell it's rubber. But like the oozes that they were using, the misshaped melted pieces, all the extra little parts that you don't know what they're for, but they look gross. I think it all was done very well. I did some looking into it. Rob Bottin was technically the one that's credited with it, but there's an uncredited help from Stan Winston, who is a famous special effects artist. A whole bunch of movies. Of course, none of them are popping into my brain now. I want to say Jurassic Park, but I could be wrong. But it made sense once I was looking into that. Another thing I think that helped the special effects is, for a lot of it was kind of in the dark, and it was out of focus at some points, like when they found the burned Norwegian bodies.
Yep.
They kept it not the main focus of the shot, which did two things. One, kind of kept it up to your imagination, your interpretation.
Absolutely.
Which obviously always makes things scary. And two, it didn't give you too much. They give you hints of it here and there, but then once they finally show you what's going on, they then do show you in all of its glory.
Yep. Surgical removing and all that stuff.
Yep. It doesn't feel like you've seen it at that point. It's you're wanting to see more of it, and then they finally give it to you. I thought that was really well done.
I did have a problem with that part, but maybe it's just a logistical standpoint. What happened to quarantining procedures? Like, granted, yeah, it's something they first stumble upon, so let's just bring this thing into our laboratory. inside the deep heart of our base.
Yep. In horror movies, scientists always just neglect all of that. They're just like, alien species, let's cut it up with everyone in the same room.
What could go wrong?
Worked out great in Aliens.
Literally everything. Another thing, a problem I had with this movie, granted it's like I was saying earlier, not everything's to be explained, but the concept that they found the spaceship, they didn't really broaden upon that. It was, this is here, we found it, let's move on with the story. I don't know, I felt like it was a little lackluster. To me, it felt like a rushed concept, but I don't know.
I would guess that in wrestling, there's a term called kayfabe, and it's basically what's going on in that story is not real life, basically. So it's kind of operating on its own universe. So in kayfabe, they probably were thinking, let's deal with the immediate issue, which is the thing, and then we will come back to the ship, and then we'll figure out what's going on with that. It was kind of a process of importance.
I suppose that makes sense.
Trying to get rid of the thing that's terrorizing them. Speaking of ships, though, I cannot for the life of me figure out what the deal was with the smaller ship that Blair was building himself. We never do fully know, as far as I'm aware. At least I can't remember if they find out if Blair himself is infected with the thing, or if he just lost his mind. But apparently he's just scavenging parts and building ships underneath some tunnel that he dug out, which leads me to one of my biggest problems was the passage of time in this movie. There's no indicator at all how long they've been in Antarctica, how long they've been dealing with the thing, how much time passes between scenes. They have fade outs that are kind of weird that just happen. It's very hard to keep track of the timeline.
Mm-hmm. I also was kind of confused. I thought maybe he was in there for maybe 6 hours or so, and how far he got with building that ship. The part of me was like, is he's expecting to go in there, but then maybe it was just going to be a part of him that was going to fly away, but it was underground. Where's that ship going to go?
And I think, to me, that does signify that he had been taken by the thing.
Oh yeah, towards the end there when he knocks what's-his-face out in the underground, I'm assuming at that point, if he wasn't already 100%, that was it.
Say there's no other logical reason to me that the Doctor would know how to build a spaceship. But I also kind of was running under the assumption that, he's just lost his marbles, and I like the idea that he's just down there welding and hammering random things together thinking it's gonna fly.
He's bored.
And some other things that just come to mind. I was always under the assumption that this was a well-received movie. You never hear anything but good things about the thing. A cult classic, things of that nature.
Except for the new one.
Well, yeah. But this specific one, and not the one before it either. This specific one, I've never heard bad things about. Mm-hmm. But I was also looking into that. Apparently, it was not only a financial flop, but also did not go over well with the critics. Apparently, E.T. came out around the same time, so that crushed any dreams of it making money.
Stole the thunder.
Yeah,
I could see that.
I thought that was interesting. I never would have thought in a million years. And it kind of, to me, it might have been a movie ahead of its time.
I could see it.
It always seems like...
Wasn't there recently a movie that got released that was supposed to do really well, but didn't, just because there were a lot of other popular movies coming out?
It probably happens all the time. Yeah. It's super vague. I have no idea. Is there anything that you want to touch on?
Flamethrowers. Why'd they have so many, and what would they possibly use for?
Melting things.
It seems a bit extreme.
It's a lot of ice.
I suppose.
I mean, it would speed the job up. It'll also refreeze horribly, but
yeah, no. I thought the abundance of flamethrowers, but I mean, I suppose that's a plot point.
Why did they have flamethrowers in Aliens? Who knows? Okay. It's just, you have them. If you're sciencey and you're in a weird place, you're gonna have flamethrowers. If I was going to space, or if I was going to Antarctica, first thing I'm packing, flamethrower.
Yeah, I also for this movie I enjoyed some of the one-liners that Mr. Kurt fucking Russell had.
What was one? Say it.
The one that I had was
We'll just warm things up a little around here.
Yep.
It's like, no.
I remember the one I was thinking of now. It's the thing does its thing, and he goes, "What is it?"
Fuck you too!
It was so good. Any other thoughts that we might have missed out or that you wanna bring up here?
How much Kurt Russell looked like a prospector.
That hat. That was a sick hat.
That hat and all the dynamite. Like,
He apparently almost killed himself with that dynamite in IRL,
oh,
which would have been tragic.
is it literal use of practical effects here? Or?
I didn't look into it enough. I just remember skimming through some of the stuff seeing, hey, Kurt Russell almost killed himself with dynamite.
I need to look up trivia facts.
There's some interesting stuff out there. So I suppose then we'll wrap it up. Overall, did you like it?
Yeah, it was better than I anticipated for being as old as it was. I don't know. I don't say I have a problem with older films. Granted, they are kind of the foundation where a lot of films are now. It's just when you're oversaturated and exposed with a lot of scary movies now, and then you go back, and now with the clear TVs that we have, it really kind of kills the practical effects. It makes it look even more fake. But all those aside, all in all, it was. I liked it.
And I know what you're talking about it too. Now, given the passage of time, everything else is built upon what that and other movies have done. So it won't seem as fresh or as new because you've already seen it redone with newer techniques, things like that. But I agree with you. I actually really liked it. I think it did better than I thought it would because I was kind of hesitant going in with how much I'd heard about it. I had only seen this movie once, maybe. A long time ago, probably middle school, and it was just on TV randomly.
Same.
Which happened a lot, apparently. I just would kind of watch movies. So I didn't expect the effects necessarily to super hold up, or usually it's the acting. The 80s doesn't seem like that long ago, but in terms of the way people talked and their mannerisms, it's a whole different galaxy, it seems like.
It really is.
But I think it was fairly timeless, other than Null on his roller skates. Nothing else screamed 80s to me other than the soundtrack, but in a good way it did that.
Yeah.
So I dug it. I dug it a lot. I'll probably watch it more times.
I mean, you did buy it.
I rented it.
Oh.
But it would be something I would see myself similar to Alien or
It came in a
The
bundle
Shining. I would watch it at least once a year, maybe not that often, but if I see it in the queue, if I see it in the queue, I'm playing it. What was your what the fuck moment?
I suppose where the fuck they get all that weed?
I had the same thought. I had the exact same thought.
After I saw him pulling out a joint, I'm like, if they've been here for a while, first off, if this is a government expedition, how'd they get it past there? But then again, I mean, maybe it's been there the whole time, so who knows? Maybe it's been a tradition where one guy brings it there and whoever was there before left it there, I don't know.
Well, I mean, it might be a government expedition, but I don't think there's any cannabis laws in Antarctica, Tom.
It's true.
One thing that really kind of stood out to me initially, obviously, I had written down my what the fuck moment 2 minutes in was them trying to shoot that dog.
Oh, yeah.
But then it came back around full circle with my what the fuck moment ended up being the dog when it first is in that cage and all the other dogs start barking at
I felt
it.
sorry for those other dogs.
Oh yeah, and when they shot the other one and
I'm a
the
dog guy.
handler
I was just like,
screamed,
oh.
But when the tendrils start freaking out and its
Oh,
face
yeah.
splits, that really any scene with the thing doing its morphing and contorting and whatever you want to call it could have been a what the fuck moment. But I specifically went with the dog just because of the very first time you see it. I also thought about the head, the spider head rolling away.
Yep.
That was
A lot of, I noticed a lot of these scenes, any of the morphing stuff, really threw me back to Dead Space.
I mean, it's probably a huge inspiration for the creators of Dead Space.
For sure.
As well as, what was Dead Planet? Was that the other one where you're out in the Antarctica and pick up the heat?
I think so, yeah.
I didn't play far enough to see the real villains or the enemies in that, but I can only assume.
Had a very arcadey concept,
Yeah.
but yeah, no.
What was your favorite scene in the movie?
Honestly, I can't think of one right now. Oh, that one. When the dude's chest caves in, I really enjoyed that part. Granted, I knew I had a vague feeling what was going to happen only because I've seen a lot of it in videos I've seen before. But I didn't expect it to cave in when he was trying to give him stuff and just kind of opened up and took him in.
It's his arm.
Yeah. I kind of like that scene because it's to me it reminds me of like the old Alien movies when they're trying to find out what's wrong with the guy on the table in the chest burster. It's like the same kind of concept. Suddenly, that's where shit hits the fan again. So,
and I do realize now that we're drawing a lot of comparisons to Alien, and they did come out relatively close together. Alien, I believe, did come first. I believe it was 79. And they are completely different movies from a certain perspective, but there is a lot of similarity, and I think that's part of what makes it work. I feel like the idea of unstoppable alien invader will always be kind of compelling, no matter where you set it, whether it's outer space and Alien, whether it's in Antarctica and The Thing, or the jungle with Predator. It's probably one of my favorite just ideas for a story.
Yeah.
My favorite scene was the very final scene with Mac and Childs after they'd blown up and they're chilling in the rubble. Mostly due to the idea or the argument as to whether or not Childs himself was the Thing, because he drinks that bottle that they'd been using to make Molotovs with. But having known this argument going into it, I was paying some extra attention to what was going on there, and the bottle that he hands him is the same one that Kurt Russell is running with at the very beginning. Through the snow, and it's got, I don't know what brand it was, but it's that green bottle and had the white label with the red X's on it or something like that. So as my thought that is just actual alcohol. Still doesn't explain whether or not Childs is or is not the Thing, but I don't think it's gasoline that he's drinking, but it is kind of a neat idea, and I like how they leave that open to interpretation as to, are they fucked or are they not? Technically, either way, they are fucked, because they're just going to freeze to death, but...
No one's coming.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they did say something about rescue coming, but yeah, whatever. Yeah, no, I agree.
And finally, who's your MVP?
I'd have to just go with Kurt fucking Russell. I mean,
Kurt fucking Russell.
That man and his one-liners and his little quippiness, and I did kind of enjoy how he went from being himself and then being stranded outside, coming back and being white the rest of the movie. It was kind of funny.
Mm-hmm. Would you say Kurt Russell's like top 5 all time?
I'd put him on the lower top 5, yeah, maybe.
Lower, maybe top 10, maybe easier.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say there's not like a huge volume of Kurt Russell movies that I watch, but the few that I do, I just think he's the coolest dude. I don't know if you're as familiar with Death Proof or not, replace Stuntman Mike, but I fucking love it. Obviously, Escape from New York, LA, whatever.
I think they're both. It's a sequel, I think.
Right, but
yeah.
Escape from New York's better.
Little Big Trouble in Little China. Was it that one he was into, or was that somebody else?
That I can't remember. I want to say it is. Oh, but also imagining, what's his name? The guy from Ghost? Demi Moore? And Patrick Swayze? I don't think it's Patrick Swayze, but for some reason I'm imagining him. Anyways, I digress. Solid choice, and I thought about picking him too. But I ended up going with the creature effects by Rob Bottin and
Good
Stan
pick.
Winston.
Good pick.
I didn't expect him to look so good. It's similar to every time I put in Jurassic Park, and that T-Rex still looks amazing.
Do you ever wonder what happens to those props after the movie's done?
Oh, I'm sure
just
they
sit in a
destroy him.
warehouse?
Yeah. Even if they don't destroy him, that they have to deteriorate some way or another. Nowadays, I know a lot of props get sold. Like Adam Savage will bring them up on Tested often.
Do they use those funds for like charity stuff usually, or
Either that or just to recoup money, because I mean it is a business.
True.
I'm sure certain things they will keep now with the forethought that it could be a collector's item, or it could be a big thing to put in like a museum or their lot or something like that. But I'm not sure what they would have done with that back in the 80s. Anyways, that wraps up this episode of Dudes Watch Movie Podcast. The next one should be dropping 15th or 16th, haven't decided yet. And we will watch probably my favorite horror movie of all time, The Shining. Have you ever fully seen The Shining?
no? Not all in once. Not in one sitting. It's been A little bit here and there, like
Okay.
watching so falling asleep, like I do.
Okay. God damn. Anyways, stay tuned for that one. I'm the Notorious GING.
I'm Dead Sprocket.
Thanks.